This poem is titled David. He is the page I cannot tear cleanly from my book. When I try, he leaves jagged edges in the spine that continues to feel his weight. I still jump when any man I don't trust puts a hand on my shoulder. I don't trust most men. My withdrawal of consent did not withdraw him from me, and I'm still waiting for it to be over. Just like that night, when I couldn't sleep after. So I paced between his kitchen and his back porch, alternating between contemplating the sharpness of his kitchen knives and waiting for the sunrise, so he could take me back to the car I left at the bar. Despite him, I learned to love. I learned to trust my body and the bodies of others, but I'll never forget him. In time, I accepted that I cannot forget him and that I don't have to forgive him. He is part of my story, but he does not get to define it. He is only a page with torn edges where I've tried to edit my past. But this is my story. I am my story, and I did not end with him.
This piece is called Alone Together, and I think that's kind of beautiful because, speaking on what Rachel and you all have kind of hinted on, sexual violence is ultimately very isolating to people, but it impacts so many individuals. So we see different numbers, different statistics, different figures, but we kind of look at about 1 in 3 women, 1 in 7 men have been affected by sexual violence at some point in their lifetime. But people can be so isolated about it. So we like the piece because it was the piece, but also because the title was Alone Together, because it feels very alone, it feels very isolated, but really it's a whole community of survivors who are there. And then there's a whole community of people like service providers who are there to help them along the way and on their journey.
It's the official plug for all of our services, but I do really want to talk about one thing that I think is really important with what we do at the partnership is that we also offer counseling to those who come in. And the really great part about the counseling that we offer is that it's also extended to the family members or the friends that have also been there, but just because the assault isn't something that physically happened to them, it's emotionally something that really can affect so many layers. You know, it's sort of like a ripple effect. You know, the initial assault can occur, but then through that, so many people are affected. And so we do offer that counseling, and it's not even just for the clients that we have that come in where it happened 2 days ago. It can be clients that come in and it happened 20 years ago, and they're just now saying, you know, I haven't unpacked this, and I've held on to this. And I think that everyone is different, and everyone needs their own time.
Something that I relate to this work is the idea of when you're battling something within yourself that's non-visible to the outside world, you feel very separated. You feel like there's a filter, you know, and so looking at, like, imagining, these all look like people you might see walking down the street, but instead of seeing them like they're right in front of you, they're kind of transposed onto these pieces of paper. It kind of reminds me of that sense of not feeling fully present because you're so busy dealing with the other things that are happening to you that you no longer feel like you're within your own self, like there's another invisible wall between you and everyone else. And I kind of get that sense from this.
I think sometimes with sexual violence, when you're talking about the shame, it also comes with wanting to withdraw and isolate, almost hide, because thinking that if I wear bright clothes or if I'm my boisterous self, I'll be a target again. And so you isolate, you withdraw, and kind of, in a sense, hide who you really are and who you might normally be.
I think about it as that it's glass mimicking paper. So when we first look at it, we think of these people as sheets of paper. You think about trauma, someone's crumpled the paper on them. And because these pieces of glass, it's like they were crumbled, that trauma came in, and now they're frozen there. And there's that sense that they can never be straightened out, because even to try to ease the creases would break it. And I think that's how trauma can feel sometimes, is that when you were malleable, something came in and froze you, and you're afraid you're afraid to even address the wrinkles in you because it might break you.
There's the other side too of trying to be a best friend and trying to support and being quiet and like a sheet of paper, trying to stay light and not knowing which direction, even though you're wanting to take a forceful direction, even though you're wanting to report it. And if your friend is not willing to take those steps, it's also learning how to be quiet and to honor that space as well, even though you feel it's the absolute wrong thing to do. So I think as a support system, not stepping over the victim, but truly being a support and taking their lead, no matter if you feel it's right or wrong.
We are giving that power and control back to them because that's something that was taken away from them during their assault. And so every little thing, the decision, would you like this door open or closed, we give the power and control back to the survivor because that's something that was taken from them. And that's something that I've seen with some of my own clients where they've got a family member or a friend that really, is yearning for them to either report to law enforcement or to go to counseling or utilize some of those services that we have. And that's something that it's difficult to say, but also, like I've said before, that every survivor is going to go through that healing process in their own time, and that's something that they have to do for themselves. And so to be that, learning how to take that as someone who is walking through life with someone who has been a victim of sexual violence, learning how to not take their power and control, but give them that power and control, but be someone that's going to steadily walk through that with them and be there for them.
So I also see a lot of resiliency in this piece. Does anyone else see any resilience in it? When I look at it, kind of speaking on what Marcus was talking about with being a page in the book, I kind of see it as almost that the assault is a page in the book of their life. And yes, it's crinkled and it's wrinkled and it's messy, and life is probably going to be messy, but that doesn't mean that there's not hope. There's not hope for not struggling every day. There's not hope for being able to have an intimate relationship again, or to feel safe, or to feel okay in your own body again. I see this as being a page in the book of a very long story and a very long life. And yes, this will likely impact a person for much of their life sometimes. Sometimes not. Every survivor is different. Trauma is messy and different, and no two survivors look the same, and they don't react the same. They may cry about their assault and laugh about it. They may make jokes about it. They may have no affect. They may just shove it in a closet in the back of their mind, never to open again. But there's a whole story to unfold. There's a whole story of a life. And that doesn't mean that what happened to them is their entire story. It's just a page of their much longer and potentially very fruitful life. So does anybody see resiliency in it now? Yes, ma'am?
I think at first I saw that figure on the top as kind of looming. And when you were talking about cycles, you were kind of pointing up there. So I was thinking of that as like a perpetrator figure in my mind. But then when you said resiliency, I saw it as like people coming out of it. So even that one at the bottom is like about to come out of it too. So still wrinkled, still stinging, kind of words that we've all used here, but also like coming out of it too.
Like clawing their way back up the wall.
The folks on the wall, they're just hanging on. They're trying to keep it together on their own. And that's tough. Trying to do it on your own, keep it together. No one's going to see that crack, but you got that crack, right? And so what happens is that when you let that go and you get help, you can kind of not have to do it on your own. And you know what? Sometimes you have to go down before you come back up. Sometimes you have to humble yourself, be empty and humble and broken. Acknowledge what took place, get the help, and move on so that you can be that productive person in society. So I know that usually up means greater, but in this case I see where up means they're just trying to do it on their own. and they're hanging on for dear life on the wall, so. And there's a lot of people doing that.
And I really feel almost like piggybacking off of what you're saying. Our gaze as the viewer, the spectator, is drawn to these on the wall. And now that we know it's glass, it's almost like we're watching, waiting for these to shatter. You know, we see these on the floor and they haven't shattered. Maybe they're, I don't know, maybe their strength, their resiliency is coming from each other. But we're all just sort of kind of watching these, like when are they going to fall off? And so maybe that's a commentary on sexual assault in the media. You know, we only see a few, our gaze is only drawn to a few high-profile victims or assaults, and we sort of all watch like this collective train wreck. You know, you can't turn away. You know, but we just sort of ignore, gloss over the myriad others.
Also, if you view the ones on the wall as hanging on the wall and holding on, there's a sense of relief of being a part of the group at the bottom. There is, I mean, well,
No, I resonate really hard with that feeling, so I had to laugh.
She wasn't mocking you.
No, it was total agreement. It was total agreement.
I just mean like being able to lean on one another and be a part of this collective, and it's less of like waiting for the people to fall, but more of just waiting for them to come to your arms and waiting for them to join you. And so being able to release that tension from the wall and join the collective at the bottom and be a part of that group who can support one another.
So I like almost even thinking of it as a circle, and you don't know which of these pieces that are coming up, you don't know which ones. Maybe the one at the very, very top, someone might look and say like, wow, they've really gone past through and they're on their path for healing. But that maybe could be the person that is really about to fall, because sometimes people have it outwardly so together and you don't know. And as someone that works firsthand with survivors of sexual violence, I have to check myself, because I could have a client who we are making jokes and we are laughing together, and that's okay, because that's something that we do every day in our office, because you have to find that joy where you can. But to not just assume, oh, they're okay, they've healed, they've passed it, like they're good. That sometimes the people that seem the most strong are really the ones that need that help. So I really like thinking of it as a mixture of both. You know, that there's that people, and that's not to say that the person hasn't fallen, come back up, and that it's okay to fall again. If you fall back and say, I need that help again, you know. And so it's something that that I think the healing can also be a cycle. I think going through from the top, from being alone to getting that help to going back up. Often in healing from trauma, it's rarely ever completely linear. We learn so much about trauma and the trauma that sexual violence in particular can have on the brain, and the long-lasting effects that can have on a survivor. So I really like thinking of it as something non-linear, that it could be